Hey everyone, Mark Meckler here, and welcome to the Sunday Night BattleCry. I'm so glad to be home with you, home with my family. Hopefully, a lot of you know, I've mentioned it before. We had our first grandchild born in the last couple of weeks. Super exciting. I think it's just over 14 days now, maybe 16 days. So there's a new not Meckler in the world because my daughter's married, but she's out there, and we're super excited to be fighting, not just for you, not just for me, but for Lorelei's future. And I think if you have grandkids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And frankly, if you care at all about America, whether you have kids or grandkids, nephews, nieces, neighbors, friends, or just out there thinking about the future of the country, you care enough to be fighting, not just for yourself, but for those to come. And thank God so many people have done this before us, or we wouldn't be here able to have this fight. This week, my battle cry is that call to action. I want you to do something that is easy, frankly, in my opinion, because it calls for you to actually do nothing. It calls you actively do nothing about something, and that is ignore the polls. I know the polls are all the rage right now, and Kamala's up, and blah, 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 and it's 4 and it's 6, and it's 10 and it's 2, and it's nothing, and they're even, and whatever. That's really where I'm at on the polls. And I'm getting asked to comment on the polls all the time. And honestly, this is my comment because, of course, Kamala Harris is getting a huge bump. What would you expect? I mean, if you're a rational, logical person, you understand that the Democrats traded in the most undemocratic way possible. They stole a primary election victory from Joe Biden. They threatened to force him out under the 25th Amendment. You got all kinds of pressure. He's admitted that. And they stole it from him and they installed a candidate who is not dead or actively dying. And so, of course, she's going to get a bump in the polls. I don't care. I'm not worried about it. I would add also that the left wing media has created an entire bubble around Kamala Harris. She's gone from being one of the worst, probably the worst politician in modern America. And that's hard to say because Hillary Clinton was so bad. When I say worst politicians, I'm not talking about policy or programs. I'm talking about just her ability to relate to people, her ability on the stump, her ability to speak. She's one of the worst in modern American history. And she went from that to the magic candidate. They put her on the cover of Time magazine, looking regal. Everybody's talking about how magical she is, the joy, and the unending joy. So, of course, she's going to get a bump in the polls. And so, my opinion about the polls right now is I'm not like some people who say they're all wrong. I'm just saying ignore them. Don't worry about them. And instead, what you should do is work, work, and work for the candidate that you believe in. That's your job. And being mired in the minutia of polls is not a good idea for you. I don't rely on the polls. It's not that I don't ever listen to them. It's not that I don't ever read them. But right now, they're not going to be helpful to you in any way. They're doing exactly what we should expect them to be doing right now. Again, I'm not even commenting on accuracy or inaccuracy. I'm just telling you, reading the polls and focusing on the polls doesn't do you any good. So ignore them. You know, this battle cry, there's going to be some good news and quite a bit of good news. I think it outweighs the bad news. So we'll start with one of the good news items. There was a news story out of New York City, and there is a video in Citibank headquarters. I'm not necessarily a fan of Citibank, but there were climate protesters taking over the lobby of Citibank in New York City. And you got to watch the video. I probably shouldn't say this. I'll probably get in trouble for this, but for me, it's very satisfying. You have these obnoxious climate protesters in the lobby of the bank in Citibank, one of them with a video camera, kind of in the face of the security guards. They're demanding meetings with Citibank executives. By the way, you couldn't demand a meeting with Citibank executives, they'd throw you out. And a security guard walks up to the guy, pushes his camera out of the way, and hits the guy in the face. Now, I'm not advocating violence. I don't ever advocate violence, but mess around and find out, right? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. We have these climate activists all over the world trying to take over businesses, gluing themselves to stuff, throwing paint on fine art, and in this case, taking over the lobby of a business. They have no right to do this. This is private property. And I have no problem with a security guard doing what needs to be done and acting aggressively, hitting this guy, shutting him down, and ultimately, hopefully, they got dragged out. Now, unfortunately, because it's New York City. I'm guessing there's a decent chance this security guard in Citibank will be charged. And I think that's horrible. If we want to restore any sort of civility to our society, people need to know that when they behave like this, there will be consequences. And we understand that for the most part, in a city like New York City, there will not be legal consequences for protesters like this. They can do a lot worse and get away with it. Maybe they get arrested and then all charges just get dropped because they're liberal, crazy, radical leftists. But they need to know there are potential physical consequences. That's the way it works in a polite and well ordered society. So, in my opinion, two cheers for the Citibank security guard. I hope they don't press charges against him. And I hope the climate protester learns a lesson. All right, up next, not such good news. And this is Governor Walz. Governor Walz out of Minnesota, perhaps the most radical governor in the United States of America. He loves everything that's anti American. He loves transing the kids. He loves putting tampons in fourth grade boys' bathrooms. He loves seeing the cities in his own state burned to the ground where he called off the National Guard. And he apparently loves stealing valor. There's a lot of argument around whether Governor Walz actually stole valor. One of the ways that is technically stealing valor is claiming a rank that you never achieved in the United States military. And he's pushing back, saying nobody should ever attack anybody else's service in the military. And I absolutely agree with that. I have the highest regard for those men and women who serve in our military, willing to put their lives on the line. It seems, though, that that's not Tim Walz. Now, he did serve 24 years in the Minnesota National Guard. Kudos for that. But when it came time to go to Iraq, apparently he abandoned his unit. He retired early, even after assuring his troops that he would be there with them if they had to go to Iraq. He's falsely claiming, or people for him are falsely claiming, that he couldn't have known they were going to Iraq, but he absolutely knew. And we have others in his unit saying everybody absolutely knew they were being called up to Iraq. And he also is claiming the rank of Command Master Sergeant. And he never achieved that rank. He was given that rank contingent on finishing his training and going to serve in Iraq, neither of which he did. But after retiring out of the military, he was entitled to do that. He claimed the rank of Command Sergeant Major repeatedly. Now, people are trying to say he didn't command that rank or he misspoke. But today, or this week, I should say, a story came out that he minted challenge coins. Now, if you don't know, a challenge coin is something that officers give out in honor of a special occasion. And that's a coin about the size of a 50-cent piece, say. And it shows his rank on that coin, which he had minted as Command Sergeant Major. He wasn't a Command Sergeant Major when he retired. In fact, that rank was stripped of him and he was pushed back to a Sergeant Major, not a Command Sergeant Major. Command Sergeant Major, again, was a contingent rank he was given upon completing training. He had completed his training for that rank. And if he had deployed with his men and women to to Iraq. He never did that. And yet, after coming out of the military, he had these challenge coins printed showing or minted showing his rank as Command Sergeant Major. That is 100% guaranteed absolute proof of the definition of stolen valor. He's dishonest. That's who Tim Walz is. He's not defended himself in this regard. He tries to defer this by accusing people of attacking his service. Nobody's attacking his service. People are attacking him for claiming something that he never achieved in the military. That is the definition of stolen valor, and that is Governor Walz. So among all his crazy leftist liberal policies, he's also a guy guilty of stealing valor, somebody we shouldn't trust, and somebody who certainly shouldn't be one heartbeat away from the presidency. Switching from Walz to Harris, Harris obviously waltzing along to the nomination. She is promising now a crackdown on greedy corporations who are price gouging. So, does she not understand basic economics, or is she lying about what's going on? The answer to that question is yes. Yeah, I don't think she understands basic economics, and she's lying. Because it's not greedy corporations that are responsible for inflation, it's Vice President Harris. She claims to have been in absolute lockstep, and Karine Jean-Pierre, the world's most untalented press secretary, says that Harris was and is and remains and will be in lockstep with all of President Biden's policies. And his printing of money and his spending of money and his borrowing resulted in some of the worst inflation in modern history. If you use their numbers, it's the worst inflation in 48 years. I don't think their numbers are correct because they don't count housing and they don't count fuel. And I think they undercount inflation radically. It's probably the worst inflation in over 100 years. That's something that President Trump said recently. It's horrible, outrageous, unbelievable inflation. And how do we know this just fundamentally? Because it's affecting you. Because when you go out and buy eggs or bacon or gasoline or pay your rent or pay your mortgage or try to buy a house or whatever it is you're spending money on, what you're finding is that you pay way, 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 way more than when Biden and Harris took office. Bidenomics, Harrisnomics, whatever you want to call it, both of those all rolled together in one are costing you way more money. I know it's costing my family money. You know, it's funny. My son works in Washington, D.C., and he was home over the last couple of weeks visiting his new niece. And one of the things he did while he was here is he actually bought a bunch of beef and took it home with him. Why? Because the prices are so much higher in Washington, D.C. Inflation affects different places differently. It's way worse in Washington, D.C. But the bottom line is because inflation's so bad, he's working to save money. He's looking for bargains on beef. And a lot of families aren't as lucky as he is where they can afford to buy the beef. A lot of families just aren't buying the beef anymore. And this is the federal government's fault. The federal government is making it more expensive for our beef producers. They're putting more and more regulations on them, making it more and more difficult. They're doing this across all agriculture. And what they're trying to do is control the food supply and make it more expensive and more difficult for you. And this is part of Harris's policies. And now, so what she's going to do, she says she's going to crack down on the evil corporations. How does that work for us when the federal government does price controls? Well, look at how it elongated, made more difficult, made the Great Depression deeper in the 1930s. Right? Price controls do not work. They never work. And this is what a would-be President Harris is promising. This is somebody who is a moron on economics and somebody who is just blatantly dishonest because it's all of her policies that have caused this radical inflation, and you're paying the price in your pocketbook. And if you're thinking of voting for Kamala Harris for president, it just means that you don't care about the poor because you want them to pay more for basic goods, for more for their rent, more for their fuel, more for their heating, more for their food. Or you're just stupid and you don't understand basic economics, or maybe you're like Kamala Harris and it's both. Look, something else that's going on with not just Kamala Harris, but all the radical liberals in the United States of America and worldwide. And this is people in the Western world. They're talking about and acting on cracking down on free speech. The Biden administration did it in spades, working with the media. The media is now, the old corporate guard media is now in cahoots with the Biden administration, with all leftists, with all Democrats, cracking down on the things that they don't want you to say. Not only things they don't want you to say, things they don't want you to hear, things they don't want you to read. And so they're trying to do that on the internet. They're trying to do it by controlling media outlets. They largely control all the large mainstream media outlets. Thank God for outlets like The Blaze and Daily Wire and things like that, Epic Times, where we can get alternative media. But the bottom line is they're cracking down on all this stuff. And they're openly saying, and Tim Walz has said point blank, that the First Amendment's not absolute. And that when it comes to things like democracy and misinformation and disinformation, which means information he doesn't like, that the First Amendment doesn't protect that stuff. Now, Tim Walz may have been in the National Guard. He may have been a beloved teacher and coach, but he obviously has not read the Constitution. And he obviously does not understand anything about the First Amendment. And we are at a crisis point, a fork in the road in the Western world. One of the things that makes Western civilization unique is the idea of the open debate of ideas. This is how Western civilization grows and prospers and becomes hopefully wiser and more intelligent, is the open sharing of information. By the way, some of that information will be bad. Some of it will be wrong. Some of it will be offensive. But is this open sharing of information that is a unique hallmark of Western civilization? And now you have some of the leaders of modern Western civilization calling for and acting on openly crackdowns on free speech. We had somebody from the EU openly threatening Elon Musk because he was going to interview President Trump on a platform that he owns. That's private. It's the ultimate infringement of free speech, and it's coming from the EU. It's happening in Canada. We've seen it all over the place. They're arresting people in the UK for posting things on the internet that the government doesn't like, literally going in and busting people's door down. Uh, Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people have now been arrested in the UK. That's same kind of stuff going on in Canada. Not allowed to pray on a street corner openly, even quietly inside your own head, not allowed to do that in front of an abortion clinic, that kind of stuff in Canada, in the UK, and coming very rapidly here in the United States of America. So we're at a breaking point, a fork in the road. We're either going to protect and preserve free speech and with it the Western world, or we're going to collapse and crumble. The choice, by the way, is up to you and me. That's why we have to be in the fight. And when we're in the fight, I would say we win those fights quite often if we are seriously engaged at scale. And a place where you and me and lots of people have been seriously engaged at scale are what I call the trans wars. This is men who pretend to be women and women who pretend to be men and who are screwing up our world royally, screwing up our children, screwing up adults, doing things that might have made Joseph Mengele in the concentration camps blush, literally cutting healthy breasts off of young women, pubescent women, grown women, cutting off the genitals, mangling, trying to remake some kind of monstrous imitation of genitalia, men's genitals on women, women's on men's, just grotesque stuff. And we've exposed it. You've exposed it. Lots of people have exposed it. And we're winning. The vast majority of Americans think this is vile and disgusting and we shouldn't do it. Many states are moving to ban these practices, especially in regard to children. I expect to see many more follow. The UK has pretty much overall now banned the use of quote unquote puberty blockers. I call them chemical castration drugs. That's what they really are. By the way, they are permanent. This idea that they could easily reverse is absolutely unsupported by scientific evidence. In fact, the contrary is true. This is why the UK has now blocked them. Many countries in Europe now blocking them. Many states now blocking them. I think we're going to see this nationally. I think at some point soon, we're going to look back and think, good Lord, what have we done? You're going to have the fanatics, the parents who allowed this happen to their children, adults that have already done it and bought into this identity stuff. They're going to stick around. It's going to be with us for a while. We're winning that war. So be of good cheer. And importantly, continue to be aggressive. There should be no public space where it is a norm or okay for men to dress as women and women to dress as men. There should be no men competing in women's sports or girls' sports. We've got one coming up now in the Paralympics. A man, 50-year-old male, is competing in some of the running events, the track events, and he's a man. He's a dude. Take a look at him. And there's a woman out there who didn't get a spot on her Paralympic team because this perverted, disgusting, mentally ill old man decided that he was going to take her place. And this is anti-women. It's outrageous. And we should push back against it. We've been pushing back in other areas where we're winning as well. And that's pushing back against consumer goods companies, companies that should be good, conservative, American valued companies. Robbie Starbuck's been leading the charge on a lot of this. If you don't follow him on X, you should. He's a friend of the movement, a good conservative guy out of Nashville. First company he went after was Tractor Supply. They have now removed all their DEI stuff from their website. They claim they've removed it all from their company. I'm sure we're keeping an eye on them. They are a rural goods company, as you might think from Tractor Supply. They shouldn't be engaged in any of this stuff, and a lot of it's been removed thanks to Robbie Starbuck. Second up was John Deere. Again, shockingly, another all-American farm goods company. Unbelievable they would be involved in this woke, crazy DEI, anti-racist, racist stuff. But they were in spades, like really deeply invested in this stuff. Robbie Starbuck, again, exposed this. They have withdrawn a lot of the DEI stuff. I don't know how much. I don't know if it's enough. I used to wear a John Deere cap all the time, made me feel kind of all-American. I don't wear it anymore. I've replaced it with my Second Amendment cap from Convention of States. No more John Deere caps. Though I have to admit, I was on a road trip this week, back and forth to Houston, and I stopped at Bucky's and picked up my first ever Bucky's cap. That's replacing my John Deere cap. If you don't know what Bucky's is, then y'all ain't been to Texas, obviously. Now in a few other southern states, the world's greatest, I don't know what you call it, gas station, truck stop, food emporium, hard goods store. Like they got it all. It's awesome. It's clean. It's pristine. It's magical. If you don't know about Bucky's, go to Bucky's. Bucc apostrophe EES. I know, weird spelling. That's how it's spelled. Go check it out, Bucky's. Maybe I'll wear my Bucky's cap next week. I'm proud of it. It replaces my John Deere cap. It's all American, especially all Texas. And so there's more of these things going on. Bucky's never going woke, but now we have Harley going woke. And again, exposed by Robbie Starbuck. Follow him if you're not already following him. I'm not getting paid for this. I think he's doing great work. Harley Davidson's CEO is a guy by the name of Joaquin Zeitz. And I don't know where he's from. He's not from the US. I think he's from Europe. Somebody told me South Africa, but he sounds European to me. German, maybe, Swiss, maybe. And he's all about the woke. He's uber super woke. He's not just here to woke Harley. He's got a group that he's part of with Virgin's Richard Branson. Their goal is to woke every corporation in the world. That's their goal, to push every corporation to be woke. He was first on the board of Harley. Then he ended up as CEO of Harley. And he is absolutely destroying an iconic American brand. A lot of my friends ride Harleys. I've been a big supporter of Harley groups in the past. We've worked with them on political stuff. I can tell you Harley riders are angry because he's now doing all the DEI, supporting the alphabet soup people, gay parades, all kinds of the trans stuff, you name it. This guy is supporting it. And it goes against everything that the Harley brand is. The Harley brand is anti-woke as a brand. He's destroying that brand. We're seeing Harley riders all over the country peel the badges off their Harleys, send them back to Harley. I saw some pictures of that. We're seeing them tape over their badges. We're watching them burn their shirts and hats. I can tell you for sure, me and all my friends will never support Harley. If you haven't called your local dealership, even if you're not a Harley rider, call your local dealership. Give them grief for this. And when I say give them grief, be polite. Understand that the dealers generally don't support it. This is something coming from corporate. Call corporate. You can go to Robbie Starbuck's feed on X and you'll find a bunch of postings on this. You'll find the ways to contact Harley, or just go to harleydavidson.com and go to customer service. I called customer service and complained. I know a bunch of my friends and followers did the same. A couple of weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago, when I called Harley, there was a 45-minute wait to talk to customer service. They're obviously getting barraged. I just saw something saying 200 dealers have now written to Harley complaining. Keep the pressure on. We need to make them know if they go woke, they go broke. We need to get rid of the CEO and they need to restore Harley. All right, as far as traveling, I'm not. I'm just not traveling. I'm at home. I drove back and forth to Houston, like I said, but I'm not traveling because I'm home, because I got my new granddaughter. I want to be here with Patty and the new grandchild, Lorelei, and taking care of the family biz. It's wonderful to be home. I got my good friends, Mike Ferris and Rick Santorum. If anything needs to be done on the road, those guys are out there, and I appreciate them for that. All right, let's go to Q&A. And I have a long one today, and it's not exactly a Q&A. This is just a comment, and I want to read it, and I'm going to comment on the comment. This comes from Dallas Zimmerman. He said, I recently viewed a YouTube short featuring your discussion on the significance of creating an exponential impact during this crucial election cycle. Since turning 18, I've consistently exercised my right to vote in every election, and I've accompanied my children as they cast their first votes upon reaching the age of 18. Two of my children, now Noah, age 17, my youngest, and my son, Dallas Edward, 34, are actively volunteering as advocates in Convention of States. So good on you. I want you guys to see. So what Dallas is doing is he's passing down this sense of responsibility and activism. Because remember, responsibility more than just voting. It's being out there active in the political process. Dallas is passing that down. He says, while my involvement previously revolved around voting, my engagement has grown exponentially since I've discovered Convention of States. And my activities outside Convention of States now include meeting with and reaching out to my state rep and senator, as well as neighboring legislators, serving as an election judge for the first time in this year's elections, completing the necessary paperwork to run for a position on my town's school board, attending local fundraisers, supporting a candidate's campaign, and writing letters to the editor. And then he thanks me for leadership and inspiration. And I would just say, it's back at you, Dallas. The reason that I do what I do is because of people like you. And you should be like Dallas. You should be out there volunteering on campaigns. You should be there encouraging your kids to vote and taking them out when it's time to do their first vote. You should be running for political office. You should be supporting a local candidate's campaign. You should attend local fundraisers for candidates. By the way, you don't got to be rich. You don't have to be super wealthy to give money to a candidate. Give $10, give $25, give $100, whatever you can afford. This is how local candidates fund their campaigns. And you can definitely write letters to the editor. By the way, you don't have to be the most well-written, most well-spoken to write a letter to the editor. Watch the letters to the editors in your local paper, whether that's online or in print, and write responsive to that. Write in support of Convention of States. Write in support of conservative ideals. Dallas is doing exactly what you should do and any patriot should do, which is he's raising the generation in the next generation in the way they should go. And he's doing the work himself. He's not just telling his kids and other people to be engaged and involved. He's engaged and involved. And I promise you, if all of you who are doing this, all of you who are watching this, do that, which is actually do something, right? Don't just read the polls, skip the polls for now. Don't lament over the polls. Take all that reading time and frustration you might do and put it into action like Dallas. I believe we're going to save the United States of America. We can do it. I intend to do it with you. I appreciate you watching the Battle Cry every Sunday night. God bless you guys. See you next week on the Battle Cry.